in my opinion, I feel that suddenly it's like, wow, that tells you that in Malaysia you can get as corrupted as you want to be, and it's still fine.
Welcome to the Are We OK podcast, the podcast that talks about public policy in ways that you can understand. Peter, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
How's life? What's different about today's set?
So, if you guys notice, today's set, we actually have 2 cups of Zeus right here. And so this episode is actually specially brought to you by Zeus, a Malaysian coffee brand, right? And that makes coffee a necessity, not luxury.
Yeah, actually for me, it's a necessity. I need to wake up every morning and get the day started with a cup of coffee, and Zeus, I think, would be a good way to start.
So you start your day with coffee?
Yes, start my day. Sometimes I end my day with coffee as well.
Wow. I know every time I see you, we have coffee lah.
Yes, correct. Yes. So what flavor is yours?
So mine is actually a hot CEO latte.
Okay.
So what happened is that I used to be just a pure Americano drinker.
Okay.
Yeah. What happened was that one day, my wife started bringing this hot CEO latte, and she told me it's pretty good. And what she did is that she also added on almond milk instead.
Okay.
And after that, I kind of got hooked by it. Yeah.
So mine is sort of like a Spanish kind of flavor.
What does it taste like?
It's good because because I like things a little bit sweet. After I go exercise and all that, a bit of sweetness also, gets the minerals replaced. So this one sweet, and then Spanish, so caliente. It's like caliente. So a bit hot, a bit spicy. So not too spicy, not sambal. So it's a good kind of picker-upper, especially when you need to have a bit of energy on the road. Right?
That's nice. Nice.
So cheers.
All right,
Cheers. Thank you very much, Zeus, for sponsoring this session. And look forward to talking more about Zeus in future episodes.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so let's get on to our conversation for today, right? Now, obviously, our last episode caught quite a lot of attention, especially, when Tun Daim was being charged. And I think there was just this one thing, right? I really find the courts in Malaysia are so magical. Whenever someone gets charged, right, they will immediately get very sick. Yeah. What's the problem?
I try to give these guys the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's because they are not used to facing very stressful situations. They've been in power for a long time. They've had access to a lot of the trappings of power. So they feel they are sort of like untouchable, right? So once suddenly these actions come, suddenly they feel stressed like normal people already. Stress, this may happen to me, that may happen to me. I'm no longer invincible. Then maybe that gives them extra heart palpitation and stress. And then because of that, they have to go for inspection in the hospital. Right. And then they find out that they are not so healthy after all.
I see. You sure it's not because MACC or like the IOs they are investigating haven't sanitized their hands, so they got a lot of germs. So when they meet them already, they get sick.
That could be. I'm not sure what kind of cleanliness or health protocols they have in MACC, when interviewing these characters, these individuals. But of course, Tun Daim is quite a private person.
Yeah.
So maybe, he may have had pre-existing health conditions that we didn't know about. So give him the benefit of the doubt.
But I'm starting to suspect it's actually the germs in court, either the germs in the
MACC, is it?
Every time when it happens, it doesn't matter whether it's Tun Daim, just anyone also will just fall sick.
I think neither one of us wants to find out, put it that way, right? Okay, so what are the questions that we have today?
Let's move on to some of the questions, right? Yeah. There are really some very interesting questions from last week. I think the first thing is this. It went straight to you, right? So this person actually mentioned this. In one of Keluar Sekejap's podcasts, Kian Ming actually said that if Najib is pardoned, for DAP, it would have crossed the red line, okay? Now, right now, it's no more a rumor, but Najib's jail term is actually reduced by half, right? So what's the stance here? Is it really has crossed the red line? And question to DAP is this. Is DAP just going to pretend that they are not seeing this and don't talk about it, don't speak up about it? Because it seems like if this goes on, it may look like DAP is going to be MCA 2.0.
Sure. So I think we'll talk more about that issue when we come to the actual discussion on Najib's, pardon or not pardon, reduction in his sentence. But for just a teaser, I would say that if I were Anthony Loke, I would be feeling very relieved now because I don't have to go and put up a Facebook post to explain DAP's position on Najib receiving a pardon. Because right now, there's a very big difference between receiving a full pardon and receiving a reduced sentence. Because reduced sentence means he's still in jail and he has to serve out the remainder of his 6 years. But we can talk about that later. I just want to put a pin on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No. This one. From Pak Nga 3715, right?
Pak Nga, not Pak La. Yeah.
No,
okay.
Pak Nga.
Pak
Yeah.
Nga. Yeah.
Not Pak La.
Not Mak Nya also lah. Okay, it's okay. Pak Nga. Okay.
Now, this one is in regards to the pension. He says that if one stops additional funds to QAP pot, basically the context here is that the stopping of the pension, QAP will not be able to sustain the payout of pension to pensioner through the profits of QAP investment, thus forcing payments from this base contribution. Well, but they are decreasing contribution because the pension scheme is unavailable and increasing new pensioners. Soon the fund will dry out. This will end up becoming another bigger problem. So, by the way, if the money of 1MDB were not stolen by Najib and gang, new and present civil servants will have a softer landing. I guess to sum it all up, he's basically asking if no pension, no new money going to QAP, can QAP sustain?
Okay, so for those of you who may not know, Kumpulan Wang Amanah Pension or QAP is basically a fund which the government contributes to so that QAP can build up its own asset base, and then at the point in time when it's financially sustainable, the proceeds from those investments can be used to pay off the pension contributions.
That's right.
Yeah, but what I think that person, Pak Nga, doesn't realize is that the contribution by the government to QAP is contingent one. It's not a fixed amount every year.
Oh.
And in fact, the government has not been paying to QAP for the past few years because of COVID.
Oh.
So whatever that he said just now in terms of, because the government is stopping, pension contributions, means that the government is stopping payments to QAP. Actually, the case is not only did the government not pay into QAP over the past, I think, 3 or 4 years, because of COVID, the government actually took out money from QAP. I think the amount was about 5 billion ringgit during the COVID period.
QAP is very rich.
No, I would say that it has maybe about 1/3 the amount of assets it requires before it can get to a point where it can be viable, sustainably to pay off the remaining contributions of the pensions. Assuming that the government maybe later this year announces a shift to the defined contribution rather than the defined benefit system, basically paying for EPF. So to flip that question around, if the government doesn't have to pay for future pension contributions, what this frees up for the government now, right, is that it can actually start paying what it actually owes to QAP.
Right.
Now, that means whatever it hasn't been paying in the past 4 years, right, they can actually start paying QAP because they have a financial model in mind whereby the contributions for pensions at a certain point in time, will be transferred fully to QAP.
Right. So in other words, actually, QAP hasn't been receiving money from government for a while, or to put it this way, it's not like KWSP everyone contribute regularly. But actually there is supposed to, right? Because
that's where the financial flexibility comes into play.
Because in-house, right, in a way.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, you also mentioned this thing. By actually changing it to a KWSP model, what happened is that now it frees up the funds, then it allows government to kind of pay back whatever that was owed. Yeah. Then naturally it
not pay back, pay into
QAP, which helps QAP to be more sustainable to a certain extent.
Yeah, grow its asset base. Yeah.
Right. So actually, in a way, it's
quite
good
helpful
thing if you're looking at a just numbers perspective.
Yes. From a financial sustainability perspective, the Pak Nga doesn't really have to worry that much. Yeah, but of course, I think what we need to do is to make sure that QAP and also government makes these commitments and announcements public. Because even before I brought this up, you didn't know that QAP hadn't been receiving.
Yeah, I would assume that they should be getting it regularly.
No, they don't. I can tell you for a fact that they don't. If QAP wants to disagree with me, please, let me know. Just DM me or message me on LinkedIn.
Maybe we should invite someone from Quap.
Sure. Later on, we can come. I'm sure they'll be happy.
Quap versus KWSP. Invite
not versus lah. I think both are important. Important gigs in our ecosystem.
Yeah, very important.
They are trying to reach out to different markets, right? So Quap is more to the civil servants. EPF is more to the private sector workers.
Yeah. So it's good if, let's say, one day we can bring both together, right, and hear the difference, how things are actually done.
And also how they invest their money and so on and so forth. Any other questions?
Okay. This one, which is more of a comment, but it raises a question that I think it should kind of be addressed, right? This person is Dr. Siva. Dr. Siva said that with regards to DLP, I was a Malay medium student, was taught by a dedicated Malay teacher in those days. Language shouldn't be a barrier when it comes to educational system. We can have national language implemented, but dedication and fairness is what we lack among teacher. Now, to sum it up, he put it there, when we allow mixing education with politics, this is where the insecurity arises irrespective of race. We need to engage in all well-deserved teachers who are dedicated, firstly, who are willing to teach irrespective of language, then at least half the battle will be won. So what are your thoughts about this? Because I just came out with a video just yesterday as well. My conclusion of it is that with all this DLP and everything sometimes we end up so hung up on what language to teach that we forget that might as well you move on and build a better syllabus, argue about language later. At least people can think in higher order first. Sure. Then you improve first. The language can always translate later. Because at least half the battle is won. So I share the same perspective. What are your thoughts about this?
I agree with you. And I think it's not just about improving the syllabus, but also equipping our teachers with the right kind of skills and also the right kind of teaching methods to be able to engage the students in these areas, whether it's math, science, and so on and so forth. Because, right now, I think the challenge is not just with the syllabus, but in this kind of instant gratification, social media, TikTok generation, they lose interest very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So rather than talking about language, I think, we haven't really focused that much on the teaching methodology, the kind of, strategies or the kind of responses that the teachers need to be equipped with so that they can teach the students. That's one thing. Second thing is, I think what Dr. Siva said about the mixing of education with politics or religion is something that many non-Malays feel concerned about because whenever they see that the percentage of time that's spent on religious education increases, which means that you also have to balance it with increase in time spent on moral education for the non-Malays. They feel that suddenly the shift has gone too much towards religion.
Yeah.
Right. But then, there are also Malays who feel that in the national schools, there's not enough religion being taught. So they take their students out and take their kids out and put them in religious schools. So it's quite a complicated issue. But I think the government needs to find that balance. And I think probably should focus more on the teaching of core subjects. Like science and math.
Yeah, there are some comments when I was looking through also. They actually did say like, at least we do quite well in Bahasa subjects and religious subjects, although our PISA score not very good.
But that one is, I think we need to talk about the PISA scores in more detail in a subsequent episode.
Yeah, so I did let my staff do the PISA test level 5. I realized that it's not that easy.
Okay.
Yeah. There's some higher order of thinking skills.
Of course, some critical thinking skills.
Yeah, critical thinking skills. But I guess the point I want to make here is that you yourself, you have been to study under ASEAN scholarship.
Yeah, so right? I've done both English and BM. Yeah.
Yes, you've done Malaysian, you have done overseas education. Yeah. For yourself, what are your thoughts about this? Because if I look at the model, like let's say in Singapore, what happened was that in the early days, they had different stream of language schools, but eventually, somehow they were able to just unite everything and make it into one syllabus. I'm sure that it's not that easy in Malaysia. Yeah. However, after being exposed to so many different kind of education system, is there any thoughts?
I would say that from my experience, what is really important is the quality of the teachers. If the quality of the teachers are good, doesn't matter what language, the teacher will be able to engage you, be able to let you understand what the higher order thinking concepts are and be able to deliver that kind of a message. So I've seen it done well in BM, I've seen it done well in Mandarin, in some contexts, and I've seen it done well in English. So the teacher quality is one. Second thing is the ecosystem. if you have an ecosystem whereby the teacher is a fantastic teacher, but all the kids are running around, fighting with one another, right? That kind of environment is not very conducive for learning, right? So at least I think in the schools in Singapore, discipline is quite good. And also the other thing that many parents also find, including some non-Chinese parents, is that the discipline level in the Chinese schools are generally better, right? So they have the impression that kids can learn better in that kind of environment. Yeah, but there are also downsides to that, in terms of the teaching system in Chinese schools sometimes can be a bit rigid and things like that. We can talk about that at a separate episode. But yeah, I mean, those two things are more important: the quality of the teachers and then the environment that you are learning in.
All right. Yeah, I do agree that, because if not, then Japan won't have their own scholars, right?
Yeah, sure,
Korean won't have their own scholars.
No, and then now probably the last thing, the third thing would be, to what extent do you incorporate digital ways of teaching and so on and so forth? Something that we didn't have to think about when we were young. Okay, there's one more issue I want to bring up, which is a comment by one of the YouTubers. Somebody said this comment, Peropsep51, I think Keming was factually incorrect about funeral assistance for Selangorians when they pass away. The scheme of assistance of 2,500 ringgit was done away quietly. Yeah, so just want to update this. This is under the scheme Mesra Usia Emas, whereby it has been changed from one-off cash payment when somebody over 60 passes away to voucher assistance, meaning every year you're entitled to a 100 ringgit voucher that you can take for shopping for those who are eligible and above 60. So the complaint that some of the old folks were saying or giving to the Selangor state government was that, hey, you give this benefit to me when I die, after I die, so I can't enjoy it, right? So then after these kind of comments, the Selangor state government decided to make a change in this policy. Okay, every year on your birthday you get a 100 ringgit shopping voucher. You can enjoy it until whenever lah. So that's sort of like the shift in policy. The downside is all the officers of the DUNs will be very busy because every month they have to go and give out these vouchers.
Right. So in a way, it's not really do away with, but rather they replace it.
Yeah. So rather than, one off at the end after you pass away, this one is while you're still alive, you can enjoy it.
Oh, so as long as you're above 60 years old.
And if you're eligible, you must register for it.
You must register lah.
Yeah, correct.
Oh, then you're eligible for 100 ringgit voucher every time your birthday comes.
Yes, correct. So birthday gift from the Selangor state government.
Right. Yeah. I see. Is there any requirements or anything like must be from B40 or whatnot, that kind of thing?
The requirements are relatively lax. You get the endorsement from the ADUN, and most of the people who apply are those who really need it. You're not going to get your tycoons driving Mercedes-Benz to come in and apply for this.
All right. Cool.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's it for this segment. Let's come back later on and then we can talk about some heavy-hitting topics. Be right back. Okay, let's have a...
Okay. How many cups of coffee you drink in a day, man?
If I didn't get enough sleep the day before, maybe 3 or 4 cups. If I did, then 2 cups, okay.
Oh, so when you wake up, you straight away have your first cup?
Yeah, I need to have a cup of coffee straight away.
Oh, then you're like me, that man. I have my first cup of coffee and I wake up. Then I come in the office, I have 1 cup.
Okay.
Then after that, sometimes after lunch.
Then at night, do you drink coffee?
Oh, no. Once I pass 7, I try not to drink.
Okay. I still need to drink at night.
Oh, I used to be able to drink past 7 last time. Then nowadays, like, harder and harder.
Getting old. Yeah. But anyways, at least we have Zeus coffee today.
I agree.
Pretty good Spanish.
Nice coffee.
Caliente
yeah.
taste.
Wait, haven't cut.
Okay. Be right back.
Hey everyone, just in case you're wondering, how do we stay updated to news every day? Well, there is an easy way. We actually have a newsletter called the Coffee Break, where we help you to stay updated to the latest news in Malaysia and around the world in just 3 minutes. So every day there will be a newsletter sent to your mailbox directly to help you get smarter. Do check out the Coffee Break via the link below.
Welcome back to the Are We OK podcast, the podcast that talks about public policy in ways that are relevant to you. My name is Ken Ming and this is
Peter.
So this episode is sponsored by Zeus Coffee,
yep.
and it's a bit special. This this cup here because it has a sleeve, this pink color sleeve.
Pink color.
Why is that pink color here? Why is there a pink sleeve
So
here?
it's pink because now is nearing the Chinese New Year season.
Okay.
Right? So this is their little Chinese New Year mascot.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Looks a
actually,
bit like
I thought
Pikachu.
the color combination quite good lah. But I was wondering why is it not like full red, full on red?
I think still have to maintain some of the blue lah. Red, this red and blue is quite good, you know.
But it looks good. I like the color combination.
Yeah, it's like unity government, right? You know?
Yeah, Madani sleeve.
Madani sleeve. Yes. For Chinese New Year, and I like what it says here. The hashtag is Zeus, bring it Ong. Ong. You know, so
your surname was
my Ong. Surname Ong. So got Ong. I'm so quite happy already. So thank you very much, Zeus Coffee, for sponsoring this episode and for your very cute sleeve that I'll keep as a souvenir.
All right, if you like our episode, you can go and get yourself a CEO latte or a Spanish latte and try it out, right?
Yes, muy caliente. This Spanish is good. Yeah.
Cheers,
okay.
man, cheers.
Cheers. Okay, Peter. What's a hot topic for this week?
Hey, wow! Just as every time we thought that like not much of news, and suddenly big news just comes, right? So I think the thing that really dominated the headlines the past few days is the fact that there was this whole rumor about Najib being pardoned, and then eventually foreign news sources is saying that it's a reduction of sentence to 6 years instead of 12. And the amount that he's supposed to be fined is now an unspecified amount, right? So a lot of people are wondering few things, right? Before we even talk about the reaction from people and whether DAP crossed the red line, those kind of questions or not. Why is Malaysian news not giving a conclusive report about it, but we are getting this from foreign news sources?
So the initial sort of like report from Utusan speculated that Najib will get a full pardon. And then that was further reported by The Edge based on the Utusan report. And that Utusan report had to be had to be retracted. Right? They had to pull it back because it was not accurate. And then after that, the Minister for Federal Territories came out to say that the Pardons Board will issue a full statement. As of now, I don't think the full statement is out yet. But I think the fact that these Channel News Asia and other foreign sources have reported the reduction in sentence from 12 to 6 years, and nobody in government has come out to deny it, probably means that this is relatively accurate. I think what the Pardons Board needs to do now is to actually issue the statement where the reduction in fine and other details are specified.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think basically the foreign news feel that they have enough they have enough confirmation of the reduction in sentence and the reduction in fine that they can report it. But the local news, after Utusan made their error, feel that they need to wait until the Pardons Board comes out with their statement before they can report it in full.
Right.
That is my take.
Right. Well, but currently right now there's a lot of speculation of also it's probably due to pressure that they dare not report it until something official come out.
Yeah, possibly. I think the Minister of Communications has come out to say a few things about this as well. But let me be a bit naughty lah. This is again not any insider news, but maybe more speculative. What happens if, let's say, the initial leak to Utusan was to sort of like get people worried? Oh no, Najib may be pardoned, especially for those people who were very against what Najib did, or was reported to have done in the 1MDB case. And then now that the news is coming out to say that actually it's not a pardon, just a reduction in sentence. So those people initially were very, very angry, including PH supporters. Oh, how can this government free Najib or endorse the freeing of Najib through a pardon? Now they say, oh, okay lah, 12 to 6 years still acceptable lah. So it's like, strategy in terms of communications. What do you think? Do you think that's possible?
I think that could be. It kind of like oh, you show me something that's so bad, right? And then after that,
you tone it down.
Okay, I'm not too bad right now. I can accept this rather than the worst situation kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so that could be the case as well.
Yeah. So actually, going back to DAP, the red line, I was getting a lot of messages, from my former interns, from people in the corporate sector, who expressed their deep concern if, let's say, Najib was going to get a pardon. and that this would be something that would be unacceptable to many of them. So my sense is, after the news came out to say it was a reduction from 12 to 6 years, meaning that maybe on good behavior, Najib, who started his sentence in 2022 August, would be able to be freed in August 2026 maybe. I think that maybe was more acceptable to many of the PH supporters. Yeah. But we also have to remember that there's also ongoing 1MDB cases that are still being heard in court. So Najib is not totally out of the woods yet. Yeah, which is why I think it didn't really make much sense for him to receive a full pardon, because if let's say he got a full pardon, then he come out and then he's convicted again over 1MDB, then he has to go back in again, right? No, so that doesn't seem to be such a sort of like something reasonable to do.
Is there any law that says that a person can only be pardoned once or something like that?
You can be pardoned multiple times.
Can be pardoned.
Yeah, of course. I mean, then it again.
Yeah, we look funny lah, right?
Look funny.
Look really funny lah.
Yeah, we'll talk about the role and also the responsibilities of the king, including the former king, King Abdullah, and the kind of pressures he was under. We can talk about it for the second part of this episode. But yeah, for now, I think we are still waiting for greater clarification. But the initial anger seems to have toned down a bit,
right?
Yeah, and actually, how would you feel, if let's say the news came out to say that Najib receives a full pardon, and then later this week he's going to be freed from jail.
So as a rakyat, I think it was almost infuriating. Yeah, it was very disappointing because this particular pardon here that we are talking about a case where people's money was stolen. It's not some private matter. It did not just hurt 1 or 2%. It hurt the country as a whole.
And we're still paying for it now.
And we're still paying for it now. Yeah. So this is, in my opinion, I feel that suddenly it's like, wow, that tells you that in Malaysia you can get as corrupted as you want to be. And it's still fine as long as you are big enough, right? And this kind of leads to the next question is that, what about investors? What about investments here and businesses? Will they feel confident to continue running business? In my opinion, I think that FDIs will be quite afraid. Yeah, I mean, it may not have a long term kind of effect, but I think in the near short term, immediately there will be people questioning already, especially for foreign government, and with ESG being such a importance today,
especially on the governance part.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe suddenly you just move up to some sort of a tiering list, some kind of like whatever list that America has, right?
It would have sent a bad signal, I think, to the foreign investor community to see a government, at least part of the government on the PH side that had spent so many years raising and fighting on the 1MDB issue to suddenly have to face the prospect of Najib being pardoned and coming out. But I think it is something that, in all honesty, we will have to face, this question in the next 3 to 5 years. Because, number one, we've never had a prime minister who was jailed before. Number two, Najib is not a normal prime minister in the sense that he's the son of a former prime minister as well. So then the question is, how long do you expect Najib to stay in jail for, right? I think this is something that will continue to come out often. And I think, it may be an issue that will even divide the Malay community. Because some of the Malay community would say, look, he's done his time. He served 2 years, 3 years. Even Anwar received a pardon, although under different circumstances. Why shouldn't Najib be eligible to at least have a fair hearing on the pardons issue? So, and I think then it becomes the question of what about all these other cases that he's facing? So that those are the questions that will have to be answered on a regular basis. The process is such that the Pardons Board, where the conviction was delivered, in this case KL, will have to sit. The Minister of the Federal Territories will have to preside over it. and then whatever recommendation that they have or they want to give is then given to the king, and then the king will make the final decision. I was actually interested, to think of what would the reaction be of someone like Tony Pua, for example. I didn't text him. I can guess, that he wouldn't have been very happy if, let's say, Najib had received a full pardon. But knowing him, he knows how to read the room well. He knows how to understand the larger political context. I think he would also probably not have anticipated a full pardon because of the reasons I talked about just now. And this can be sort of like a compromise kind of a solution. So
suddenly I feel like we should invite him up.
Yes. If he's willing, Tony, please come back again so that we can have another round of our questioning.
And specifically about this.
Maybe other things as well. Some of the feedback that he's gotten from the HSR and things of that nature. Yeah, but maybe he'll show up at the KL Port Fest that's happening this weekend. Anyways, yeah. So any further thoughts about this pardon issue? Maybe think of it from moving forward. What do you think this would have, the political impact it will have on PH as well as UMNO from your standpoint, if let's say the decision is to reduce the sentence?
Okay. I think first thing is that if let's say the sentence were to be reduced, it's going to put a lot of pressure on PH. That's number one. Because right now, you're in this position where you kind of like cross the red line a little bit, right? Not full thing, but partial at least, right? Then people are going to want you to make a statement as a PH supporter, or whether you're, especially if you're a minister, right? Anthony Loke, I believe he's going to be facing a lot of questions.
A toe across the line.
It's like, so what kind of statement are you going to make?
What's your position?
Yeah. Yes. And it's a position where you make a statement, also you die. You don't make a statement, also you die. Kind of position, right? So it's really bad. And number two, right? You're not entirely responsible for the decision, but you're bearing the
political heat.
Yeah, you're bearing all the political heat. I feel like it's a really tough decision, but still, this comes down to the question: how would a PH minister at this point react to this? Should you speak up or not? And what should you do?
It'll be interesting to see, how many PH MPs as well as ministers would speak up on this. I'm not in the MPs WhatsApp group because I'm no longer an MP, but I think Anthony would have sent out certain instructions to the rest of the MPs and to say that let him take the lead to issue a statement on this. And he will only issue a statement when the Pardons Board decision is released.
Yeah.
Right. I'm probably anticipating that he would say something like, yes, it's the King's prerogative to make whatever decision that he's going to make, and also say that we're going to respect the due process of the law, whereby to remind the Rakyat that these 1MDB cases are still going on, and those cases should go on .
Yeah.
But of course, people would say, hey, you already accepted the quote unquote the DNAA against Zahid. Why not also accept this decision? If let's say there's going to be a reduction in sentence on UMNO, and I would say that Anthony would probably again play a balancing act and refer people to the due process . Yeah, it won't satisfy everyone. I'm sure it won't, but that's the kind of balancing act that you have to play . How about UMNO? How do you think UMNO would react to this?
Oh, I think the one also is going to be a two-side kind of thing. I think UMNO is the one that's facing a tougher issue because then that issue goes within as well. Because there's the faction that supports, there's a faction that doesn't support. I mean, plus the Zahid side, there's even more factions then. Yeah. So I think it's just going to make them even more messy. But however, there is this whole idea or at least impression from certain UMNO members is that at least they are going to be more well-funded after this.
Possibly,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's generally the impression that they're getting. But will they speak up? Now I'm kind of awaiting for one of their MPs or one of their very prominent guy that's always talk about freeing boss school. What's his name? Is it?
There are few.
That young fella.
Idlam Jalil.
Yes.
But he's no longer UMNO member. He's been sacked.
Oh, okay.
Jalil Isham. That one is a strong Bosco supporter. He's been sacked. So I think he will continue to advocate for boss schools freeing. And I think maybe on a final note on this, I don't think the UMNO leadership or members or MPs can voice out too much of displeasure because, like we said, it is a royal prerogative, right? So, but at least maybe some of their feelings of wanting to help boss school, will be addressed since the sentence has been reduced. Yeah. So with that, we'll finish this segment off and come back straight after this. Be right back. Welcome back to the Are We OK podcast, the podcast that talks about public policies in ways that are relevant to you. Peter, this week we also saw, the ending of the reign of King Abdullah, the Sultan of Pahang, as the king, and the installation of a new king, the King of Johor, which I'm sure will be an interesting 5 years. But, coming from your reaction, coming from what you've seen and heard, and you've posted something on Mr. Money TV as well with regards to some of the highlights of King Abdullah's 5-year reign starting from 2019. Any initial thoughts, any highlights that you want to draw our attention to?
I think firstly when it talks about this king, when he first took the reign, I didn't expect much of him, but very quickly he actually went on a very, like in Chinese, qingming, very down to earth.
Relating to the public.
Very relating to the public.
Go and order KFC.
Yes. That was something that was totally different from what you have heard about him last time, at least in rumors. And after that, he just became a king that really people just love, right? Because he makes this surprise visit. He even goes down to those banjir places, right? And he visited Sabah Sarawak at the time. It made a huge hoo-ha. People really went there and then talked to him.
So on that note, let me draw you behind the curtain again. This is a sort of an insider experience.
Okay.
So I actually had the chance to have a private dinner when with the Queen, when the Princess of Denmark was here in Malaysia for a fundraising activity for the Scouts and the Girl Guides. So I was actually seated opposite the Queen. This was in a restaurant, private function. My wife was there as well. And this was part and parcel of my responsibilities as a member of the Danish Chamber of Commerce because Princess of Denmark. So the Queen was actually very engaging, and I asked her specifically about her travels to Sabah and Sarawak because there was a lot of publicity about it. And she told me that they actually had to travel in separate cars, the King and the Queen.
Oh, wow.
Because the journey took so long. So she actually arrived first in some of the events, but even then, it was like 3-4 hours to get from one place to another. The king took even longer because he was engaging more with the rakyat, engaging more with the people. And it was the first time, I think, in Malaysian history, whereby the rakyat was so excited to see the king and the queen up close and personal in Sabah and Sarawak, that they lined up the streets, from one place to another. And this is places that usually not considered the urban areas. Urban areas had more people, but even some of the rural areas in Sabah and Sarawak, you had people lining up the streets. Some people even gave like mineral water to the Queen, saying that, dahaga ke, are you thirsty? Get some mineral water. Our roads here are a bit, sometimes not so well maintained. You should take care of yourself, things like that. So I think she was very touched by this kind of display on the part of the rakyat. So I think that's sort of like the more qingming, the more sort of like closer to the public kind of persona that they had. But we also mustn't forget that King Abdullah came in at a time that was a little bit unexpected, right? Because when I was sworn in as an MP in 2018, the king at the time was the Sultan of Kelantan.
Yeah.
Right, and of course he was replaced under. Because there were certain things in his private life that made the other sultans come together to replace him. And you had a case where the Sultan of Pahang then, who was not well, he had to step down from his position so that Sultan Abdullah could become Sultan and then become Agong, right? So, and importantly, during this time, you had COVID, you have declaration of emergency, you had a change in government in 2020, but two prime ministers, and then later the third prime minister. So it's a record for a monarch.
I think it's one of the only one who actually get to decide who's the prime minister for 2 times, right?
Yes, correct. From Mahathir from Mahathir to Muhyiddin, and then later from Muhyiddin to Ismail Sabri.
That's right.
And then the third time from Ismail Sabri to
yes.
Anwar.
Yeah, 3 times actually.
Yes.
Yeah. 1 time with a proper election, and
Yes.
the other 2 times wasn't.
So it's a lot of pressure, for King to have, and whatever decision he made, he knew that this side would have certain comments, the other side will have certain comments, and it wasn't an easy decision, in each of those times for him.
Yeah.
So I think we need to give him the kind of respect that he deserves for going through these very challenging times. And the declaration of emergency during COVID was also very tough because he didn't want it to be politicized. He needed to balance out all these concerns and also take care, somehow have some sort of a space to take care of the rakyat and still maintain the kind of democratic institutions that we have in this country through parliament, through the executive and whatnot. So kudos to him. Thank you very much, King Abdullah, Sultan Abdullah, for your service. And I'm very grateful. I'm very happy that I was an MP when you were king, and definitely will miss you. And all the best to you back in Pahang.
And one thing I have to say, right, that I do notice about this is during this period when things were really tough, he kind of stood out as the leader that people needed. It kind of reminds me of those days, right? When you read in books during the World War II time, how the British monarch actually stood up during those times to actually give the voice to the people and give them hope. I think he kind of played that role during this.
Played an important stabilizing role, and I think it's a reminder to us that the monarchy in Malaysia, has that responsibility in terms of being the check and balance when the other institutions of government becomes a bit unstable because of the political situation. And I think moving forward, because in the future, I think politics in Malaysia will continue to be quite interesting, quite fluid. I'm sure that the king will also be called upon to be a fair and just king in the future.
Yeah. So before we move on to the next section, Kian Ming, I want to ask you, with the new Agong coming in, many people actually expected it to be a public holiday because that's the usual practice, right? Yeah. But this time round, he suddenly said that, no, there's not going to be any public holiday. What are your thoughts about this?
I think that it is a good signal to send, in a sense that although we should celebrate the peaceful transition from one king to another in Malaysia, the public expectation that we should celebrate that with a holiday should be changed. In a sense that we should be able to think of this transition as beyond just a holiday. It is an important demonstration of the robustness of our institutions, in this case the monarchy, and probably in terms of Sultan Ibrahim's own reign now, an indication to us that he will be a much more sort of like a business-oriented king, because whenever you call these public holidays, right, it costs companies, it costs the private sector a lot of lost productivity, and even government, when they shut down one day, there's one less day in terms of interacting with businesses and whatnot. So I think that is probably the signal that he wanted to send.
I think the other day also, a lot of people thought that it's going to be a public holiday. They actually took long leaves.
Yeah, because 31st and then 1st of February, today is City Day, KL, FT Day, holiday in KL, Putrajaya as well as Labuan. So it's something that I think we should take note of. And the other thing that Sultan Ibrahim did was to let people know that there's not going to be giving out of titles on the 1st of February, right? Because if you think about it, he was sworn in on the 31st of January. 1st of February, if let's say, normal business as usual, you would swear in all these Datuks and Tan Sris. But that process would have been undertaken not when he was king, right? So he wouldn't have had sight or been able to, quote unquote, approve all these awarding of the titles. So he's saying that, look, we'll do it next year, but only after I've been able to go and look through all the candidates and things like that. So that's also a signal, sending a signal to say that, look, I'm taking my role as king very seriously in this regard.
Yeah, I think he already has a very strong reputation back in Johor itself. That he was very well loved. They really goes down to the ground.
Very hands-on. Yeah,
very
in many
hands-on.
areas, yes.
Yeah, and I think that right now he's sending a nationwide signal that this is going to be applied to the whole nation.
Yes.
And I personally have to say that I'm quite happy about it. Yeah, there's going to be more check and balance. But I'm also wondering, like, does it mean that next time when we have a football matches that we win, we are not going to have holidays?
That may not... that may not be such a bad thing because, like I said, when you have too many of these practices happening, right?
Yeah.
The public will have certain expectations, and I don't think it's a good expectation.
That's
to
right.
have,
Yeah. Actually, as a business owner, I really dislike it when there's a sudden public holiday.
Correct. This is very disruptive, and I think it's good that Sultan Ibrahim, the new king, has given us this signal. So interesting times ahead, and then we'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the Are We OK podcast, and this episode 10, is brought to you specially by Zeus Coffee.
Zeus Coffee.
It is a necessity, not a luxury, especially to us because we drink at least 2 cups of coffee a day. So thank you very much, Zeus.
Terima kasih.
Your flavor is what again?
This is a hot CEO latte.
Mine is a Spanish latte, muy caliente. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
I have to say, one thing about them is that they made it very affordable. That's hard to beat, really. And they got the right thing, the right taste, the right price.
Right taste, right price, right design. Next week, we're going to talk about their delivery app and those kinds of things in terms of convenience. Yep. So thank you very much, Zeus Coffee. Let's talk about the DLP, Peter. The sensitive issue, but glad that Abang Jo, the Premier of Sarawak, has responded, saying that it is something that Sarawak encourages. In fact, he wants this kind of policy to be done on a more widespread level in Sarawak, teaching of English and science in math. Sort of like a pushback against some of the rhetoric he sees happening in Peninsula. From your perspective as somebody in Peninsula, what is your impression, in terms of Abang Jo's response?
I mean, for me, definitely, I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the main reason that I'm agreeing to this is also because I think there needs to be a more solid system, not keep changing. One thing I totally I feel it when he says it, right, is the fact that it keeps changing after every single minister. It seems like whoever that's going to be the Minister of Education, right, their number one thing that keeps them busy, right, is how to stay in that position safe without needing to get into trouble. Because yes, it's a very tricky issue. Yeah, I understand that in order to fix it, there's a lot of legacy issues. There's a lot of people that you're going to step on their feet on and stuff like that. But, if it keeps continuing, it's going to have detrimental effect on the nation.
On the students, on the teachers, so on and so forth.
Yes, and ultimately, it's on the nation. I mean, you have NVIDIA coming in, so what? You don't have people, then what? You hire expert.
Okay. So on Sarawak side, I think what people may not realize is that Sarawak is the only state assembly in the country that allows you to bahas or speak in both English as well as Malay. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Yeah. So not many people are, and I think that is sort of like encapsulates the kind of more progressive and open nature of the Sarawak state government and also the system in Sarawak. Much less hang-ups in terms of which is the dominant language, so to speak.
Yeah.
And also, of course, Sarawak is a state where you actually have a majority of the population not being Muslims.
Yeah.
So I think the hang-ups about language and religion and identity is also a bit less. That is why I think it's good that the Premier can have this kind of more open and progressive strategy.
I think Sabah Sarawak itself, when I visited there and I speak to many Sabah Sarawakians, generally they don't really have a big issue with race. I realize that. Yeah, they speak mostly in Bahasa generally, but they also take no qualms in speaking English or Mandarin or anything else. They sit together, they makan in restaurant and
coffee shop.
Yeah, literally most of my Sabah Sarawakian friends, by the time they come to Semenanjung, they're only like, wow, actually racial is such a big issue.
Yeah, how come you all don't eat at the coffee shop together?
How come you all got even an argument about race? For them, it's like, we are all Sabahan or Sarawakians.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's why they don't like to see what they call the Malayanization of their politics and their policies, which I think is a good reminder to us. here in the West Coast, here in Peninsular Malaysia, that we don't need to have the same kind of hang-ups, but we also have to understand the kind of unique system that existed in Sabah and Sarawak.
Yeah.
And of course, if I want to be naughty, I would say that in Sarawak, they've not had a history of having UMNO in the party, right? So in the state, which means that issues of race and religion don't usually get played up that much, lah.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the historical fact, lah. Right. So I think this also bodes well for Sarawak, especially Sarawak, because if you can see how Abang Jo is trying to position the state in terms of the hydrogen economy, in terms of the green economy, in terms of even the digital economy, bringing more investments into Sarawak in a variety of fields. I think they're really leading the way in many areas. The challenge, I think, with Sarawak is that human capital and talent is still an issue.
That's right.
You think about brain drain, from Malaysia to Singapore. Sarawak is, even worse because there's not that many high-income jobs in Sarawak.
Yeah.
So a lot of Sarawakians come to Peninsula, they go to Singapore, they go to other parts of the world, and that's why it's important to create these kinds of jobs and investment opportunities. But I have a caveat, which is, if let's say Sarawak is really interested to drive its economy, it must be more open-minded and liberal in terms of its employment policies, right? So, for example, if let's say you or I, we're not Sarawakian, but we're Malaysian, we wanted to get a job or apply a job in Sarawak, we need to apply for an employment pass.
Yeah.
Right. So, same thing as an expatriate. So, if let's say there are too many of these kinds of localization or protectionist kind of measures, if you want to create those kind of high quality jobs, high income jobs, you also need to get us Malayans into the system.
That's right. That's right.
So that will be something that the Sarawak government needs to address.
Yeah, I think Sabah Sarawak is sitting on quite a unique opportunity right here. I mean, number one, for first time ever, they're given a lot more voice in the federal government level. I think the second thing is that we know that the world right now is hungry for energy, and Sarawak,
green energy.
Yeah, green energy, and Sabah Sarawak sits right at the perfect spot to actually capitalize on that, right? Like the Similaju's industrial park, where I heard that it's fully booked one. Like you can't get a space there because
again, I've had the benefit of visiting Samalaju Industrial Park. It's about an hour away from Bintulu. You're talking about huge industries there that is taking advantage of the low electricity prices from Bakun. So I think that's the strategy for the Sarawak state government moving forward. Have more hydro power. Of course, there are certain environmental concerns there that needs to be addressed. But having access to this hydropower would also mean you're able to produce renewable energy, and then also to be able to have those kinds of manufacturing outputs that are related to renewable energy. So people are talking about, let's say, green hydrogen, right? Whereby you can use renewable energy to break up water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. You bottle up or liquefy the hydrogen using renewable energy, and then you can transport this anywhere around the world, or even use that for local industry that will be set up in Sarawak to power the hydrogen economy. So that's what Sarawak means when they want to be at the forefront of the hydrogen economy and also the green economy.
Yeah. Talking about human capital, right? What I realized that in Malaysia, we actually only depend kind of like on Ministry of Education to develop people, right? But shouldn't it be a cross collaboration between all the different ministries? Like you being an ex-deputy minister in MITI, right? I'm sure that like you needed human capital development as well, and then there's a human resource, then there's Ministry of Education. But shouldn't all these kind of like work together to kind of like develop Malaysians' human capital ability and talent programs or whatnot?
Yeah, so you're right in saying that there are different ministries that are involved in the human capital development process at different junctures in a person's life. So, we have the Ministry of Education taking care of primary and secondary education. We have the Ministry of Higher Education looking after post-tertiary education at the university level, private as well as public universities and also colleges. And then you also have the Ministry of Human Resources. You have agencies such as the HRD Corp that takes care of upskilling and professional training when somebody is already working. You have Talent Corp doing capacity building on the internship process, processing employment passes for foreign talent and for expatriates. And then even MITI, when I was the deputy minister, there were many people coming to us to say that, look, we need more talent in engineering, in software programmers and things like that. So we actually need to have a all-of-government approach in terms of handling these kinds of different human capital needs. And I think, going back to Sarawak, this is where the state government and also the federal government can work together to try to see how we can align these requirements, not just in the short term, but also in the long term.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, but with better discussions, with more openness among the different ministries, not so defensive over things like PISA scores and whatnot, I think we can make an incremental change in this area.
Because from what I see right now is that although everyone kind of like take part a little bit, but it's not fluent. It doesn't transfer from one side to another. Just like what you said just now, right? They're looking for engineers and whatnot. I mean, if everything was fluent and was well planned from the beginning itself, they don't even need to come to you already at the point. It's just about maybe how do I upskill or how do I make it much easier for us to recruit or help us to put out advertisement or whatnot, right? But the issue is that it's not fluent. It's kind of like everyone's minding their own business.
Sure.
Primary education is on its own. It doesn't prepare you for workforce, and then upskilling of existing workforce also is unrelated to everything.
Yeah, to be fair, I think most governments in the world face this kind of issue. Ministries working in silos, and it really takes coordinated effort among the relevant ministers with also proper direction from the Prime Minister. I don't like to always point to Singapore because Singapore is a much smaller country. But I think in terms of working across silos, they are a pretty good example, and we probably can have another episode to talk about that. One example that I just want to highlight is that in Singapore, you have ministers who are taking care of their respective ministries, but sometimes you also have ministers who have double portfolio, right? And you have ministers of state, which is their equivalent of deputy ministers, that also have a double portfolio. You can do things like MTI, trade and industry, together with education, so that you can see outside silos and you can try to work outside silos as well, right? We don't have that practice in Malaysia. I'm not saying that we should follow that model, but definitely, having cross-collaboration kind of projects and also plans that are beyond just one single ministry is something that's very important. Okay, so be right back. Last topic for this episode is FT or Federal Territories Day. Welcome back to the Are We OK podcast, the podcast that talks about public policies in ways that are relevant to you. This episode 10 is brought to you specially by Zeus Coffee. I think, are you almost done already?
Yep, almost done.
So it lasted us more than an hour. So good value for money.
Yep.
And also the fact that it's relatively accessible, affordable. To me, this is really living proof that the tagline, coffee, it's a necessity, not a luxury, really works.
I got a feeling I'm going to have one more later.
Probably, yes. Especially after when we go for lunch, after lunch. Yeah. So today happens to be a public holiday. It's a FT day. We are recording in Selangor, so it's not a holiday here, but we enjoy the fact that there's much less traffic.
Yep.
So, as two people who grew up in the Klang Valley, what is your sort of like take on FT Day?
Well, I think maybe first we need to let people know what on earth is a federal territory. I mean, although we know that it's a separate thing, it's a federal territory, but why was federal territory even born in the first place?
Yeah, so we actually need to go back in history and look at the episode of the May 13, 1969 racial riots. After that, a decision was made to carve out the federal territories of Kuala Lumpur, or Wilayah Persekutuan, let's be frank, dilute the non-Malay vote in the Klang Valley, and Federal Territory Wilayah Persekutuan was carved out and not given the right to vote. So they, in the sense that they don't vote in a state government, similar to what you have in other states. Of course, they still have the MPs, but there's no adun. right? So that's one of the sort of like I think important historical junctures in Malaysia. And from FT Wilayah Persekutuan, the next Wilayah Persekutuan that was created was actually Labuan.
Yes.
This was after the decision was made to want to create a offshore center.
That's right.
So Labuan was carved out of Sabah, given a new parliamentary seat. And then the most recent creation of federal territories was Putrajaya.
Putrajaya.
Right. So you have these 3 federal territories that celebrate FT Day, which is the history of FT Day. But most people think of FT Day as being primarily focused on Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, aside from like votes aside, and then financial offshore aside, and government bodies placement aside, is there any actually special function of a federal territory?
Well, they have a minister in charge of the federal territories. Last time, the Ministry of Federal Territories was a separate ministry. Now it is parked under the Prime Minister's office. The former Health Minister, Dr. Zaliha, she's now the Minister in charge of Federal Territories. And it is quite a powerful ministry in the sense that it also has the power to influence the appointment of the mayor for DBKL, which is by far the largest and most, important local government authority.
Right.
Because of its budget, because a lot of high-end developments are happening in KL. And of course, when you talk about Malaysia, even though the administrative capital is Putrajaya, and that is important in terms of certain government dealings, but when people come to Malaysia, they still have the impression of KL city centre, right? Whether it's KLCC, now we have Menara 118, we have TRX 106, we have 106 Exchange in TRX. So KL still holds a very important symbolic and also commercial importance in the functioning of many of these activities in Malaysia.
Yeah. So actually, when you asked me just now, right, how do I feel about FT Day? Honestly, I don't know what to feel about it because not because I know the history and everything all, but like when we talk about Malaysia Day, we know it's a formation of Malaysian Day, where we come together as a nation. When we talk about different other celebrations, we know what's it for. But when it comes to Federal Territory Day,
other than a holiday,
I don't know what to celebrate.
Exactly.
I don't know what am I celebrating for.
Yeah, so I think this is where I want to broaden the discussion with regards to FT Day, City Day, some people call it. I think it's a really good chance for us to celebrate the accomplishments of our cities, using KL as one of the prime examples, but not forgetting Labuan and also Putrajaya. And what do I mean by this? When we talk about a country's economy, when we talk about the vibrancy of a country, usually it's the cities that drive it.
Yep.
Right? So when you talk about the US, you talk about the vibrancy of New York as a financial capital, as a cultural capital. When you talk about the UK, obviously London is the major attraction there. Tourism activities, cultural activities, financial, government as well. So from my perspective, having traveled to different capital cities around the world and also many major cities, what I find lacking in KL is that narrative of how we want to promote and also give and sell the narrative of KL as an international city.
Yeah.
Right? So when people think of Southeast Asia, they think of usually what? Singapore, right? And then
Singapore dan lain-lain.
Bangkok also has vibe. Bangkok has vibe.
Bangkok has vibe. Yes.
Jakarta, people think definitely a lot of traffic jams. KL, people think maybe KLCC lah.
KLCC lah.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing lah.
But actually, we have a lot to sell in terms of KL as a city. I mean, I just relate something that's close to my heart because I like to exercise. I like to go out and run. Here and there. So even though I'm living in Sri Kembangan now in Selangor, I still come to KL very often to exercise, right? And we actually have a lot of nice public parks. I'm not sure whether you been to many of them. Taman Tugu, for example.
Taman Tugu, yeah.
Yeah, very good hiking place. It's started by Khazanah. Places like the Bukit Jalil Stadium, you can run outside, whenever they are not having football games. Bukit Jalil Recreation Park, another nice place. You have this Lake Gardens. I still call it Lake Gardens. Now it's called Taman Botany or something like that. Very nice place to exercise. I see a lot of people, walking there. You also have some. You also have Titi Wangsa Lake. The area has been upgraded also. And then TDDI Park, Bukit Kiara Park, all these places, they are very crowded during weekends and public holidays.
Yeah.
So it really shows me that there's a demand for people, to want to have these green and public spaces.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think we can actually sell Malaysia and KL as a green city, as a garden city or park city, if you will. Singapore does it much better because they have the ecosystem. But one idea that I was throwing out, and I sent out a press statement this morning, is why not expand Taman Tugu to include the area around Parliament. Make that into some sort of a larger public park area.
Yeah.
Right. We actually have good examples in New Zealand, Wellington, where the Parliament sits. Outside is actually a public park, so people can walk outside the Parliament and feel quite safe. Of course, here in Malaysia we have other security protocols and whatnot, but it's okay. There's a area that's large enough around Parliament to be able to build some sort of a park that connects Taman Tugu with Parliament itself.
Yeah.
Right. Well, would that be appealing, to you?
I think just like what you said, having the chance to go overseas before, I looked at UK. There's the Hyde Park, right, in London, and then when we
Regent's
talk about
Park,
and then New York, right,
Central Park, huge
right?
park.
I realize the beauty of it is that they usually have a park space as part of a connecting lines between different areas they will go to. So I recall when I was in UK, when I needed to travel a certain street, right? I realized the shortcut is actually to cut through the Hyde Park. Even in Amsterdam, it was the same thing, right? Yeah.
Maybe smaller pocket parks here and there.
Smaller pocket parks here and there. But I think Malaysia lacked that part. What we have is actually random parks.
Yeah, it's like you drive to that park.
Correct. It's random parks. It's not connected.
Yeah.
And it's usually at the outskirts. I think the most closest to right in the city center kind, it's Lake Gardens, right? Taman Botani now. And yes, then there's the question. There's still a lot of space at the side there. Why not just maybe, plan it out a bit so that it becomes a whole walkway kind of thing, right? And so it draws me back to the next thing. The lack of town planning.
Okay, yeah.
And since we're on federal territory there, and we talk about the celebration of a city, and then come thinking, what's there to celebrate about Malaysia City? I think Malaysia City has its own history in terms of the diverse nature of the type of building, the way that it sporadically just comes out.
And also the communities that built it, right?
Yeah. To put it in a nice tone, it is different kind of design. But if we were to really look at it also, it's because it's almost like it's quite chincai done lah. We cut out this land, okay, this developer you do something. Cut out this land, this developer you do something, right? It is not well planned from the start itself to say like, look, this is how we're going to build an ecosystem.
Correct.
And now it becomes a trouble because when now you want to start looking at it, everything is everywhere.
And not connected like what you said.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think proper planning is required. That's why you need something like the KL draft plan to be formalized and gazetted, so you know exactly what zones are for what areas. And you probably meet a minister or even maybe a mayor with the vision to be able to put these different pieces together over the long term. It may not be something that you can plan for in 5 years. It may be a 20-year plan.
That's right.
To see these kinds of things comes into fruition. And I think this is where the lack of vision, the lack of leadership has cost KL the kind of stature that it deserves at the international level, to be able to go out there to sell KL as an international city. Because right now, if I ask you who's the mayor of KL, would you be able to tell me?
I don't know.
Actually, I also don't know. Right? But if I ask you, Boris Johnson, where was he the mayor of? Everyone knows it's London, because that was what he did before he became prime minister, right? So, you have people like Michael Bloomberg, who was very prominent.
And then another thing also, they have an election for mayor. We don't have.
That is also a controversial area. But I think we can start with having a dynamic minister for federal territories who can really sell the city and have a vision for the city. So you talk about, let's say, maybe sporadic developments here and there. I think we are pretty lucky in the sense that there have been entities that have been given responsibility for certain tracts of land, and then they have come up with good public spaces. So KLCC Park, for example, that's a privately owned park, but the public can access it, and you can walk from different condos around there to go and access KLCC. TRX. They also have a public area that is quite nice, connects to Jalan Imbi and all that, under the larger TRX exchange. And when this Menara 118 near Chinatown, when that's fully open, they also have public spaces as well. All right, but these are all public spaces, private spaces where the public has access to, and there are public transportation connectivity from MRT, LRT, and whatnot, but they are not necessarily connected. So this is where I want to bring in another concept, which is called the Park Connector Network. Are you familiar with that concept? This Park Connector Network?
No, it sounds like connecting all the parks.
Exactly. That's intuitive. So this is what Singapore has done, whereby they have different park connectors that connects different sort of like riverways, pathways, parkways to each other, so that you can actually go from the east to the west of Singapore.
Yes.
Cycle, jogging, walking, and things like that, right?
Oh, that's called a Park Connector Pathway.
Park Connector Network. They call it PCN.
Oh.
Yes. So
you know what do I call it?
What?
Proper pedestrian and cycling track. Yeah.
Correct. I mean, that's the function. But Park Connector Network is the kind of bureaucratic language that Singapore likes to come up with.
Right.
PCN, the acronym for short. Right. So, Malaysia, we can have that as well. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with this thing called the River of Life. Right?
Yes. Yeah, I've been hearing about it, but I don't know what they're doing.
So the River of Life, when people see it, they usually refer to the mist that comes out from Masjid Jame at night when you have this blue kind of riverscape.
Yeah, they're talking about cleaner rivers.
Yes, but the idea is actually, something that has been replicated in other places where you actually create walkways and pathways and even put in cafes and stuff like that along a river.
Yes.
Right. So, we're talking about the Klang and Gombak River that runs through the heart of Kuala Lumpur. And Singapore did this a long time ago.
Yeah.
Their boat quays,
like the
their
Clarke Quay,
Clarke
right?
Quays.
Yeah.
And not only do you have those kind of river ecosystem, which can generate economic activity, the pathways along these rivers, including Clarke Quay and Boat Quay, they're connected to other parks through the Park Connector Network.
That's right.
So you can run along, exercise along.
That's right.
They're trying to do that for the River of Life in KL. But there's buildings blocking it. There's construction happening. At different parts of the walkway and the pathway, and not many people use it because it's not connected to a larger walkway ecosystem.
That's right.
Right. So if actually we can use the river as a starting point, and I've seen this done in Malacca, for example. The Malacca River in the city centre, they actually have decent pathways on both sides of the river. I visited there last week. For KL, if you can do that on a city-wide basis, you can build that kind of pedestrian walking ecosystem. That can be a way to sell KL on the level of a city like Amsterdam, for example,
a
or
living
Denmark,
city, right?
Copenhagen, living city where people can access it, by foot as well as by other forms of public transport.
That's one thing that I see a lot in overseas is that you let's say Singapore, London, US, right? You see a lot of people jogging all around, right? And the thing is that they can jog, right? Now, I was thinking about it. What I say is a pedestrian and a cycling pathway is that in Malaysia, right? I find it very hard to actually have a proper public transportation culture unless you're very, very, very near to a station. The reason being is because, right, even just 1 km away from not 1 km, 500 meters away from a station, I can see the station, but I don't know where to walk.
Correct.
Yeah, like here, from our office here to the station is actually quite near. But there's no clear view of walkway. But if I were to go to Singapore or London or whatnot, right, I can look at something and I can see a clear path of walkway.
Correct.
I know exactly where am I going to walk and how am I not going to die getting hit by a car, that kind of thing. Here is like, you're like taking a risk just by walking. So 500 meter, let's drive. Yeah. So, and it also gives this feeling that you really don't know where are you heading already. So, when I was looking at this whole thing, as you were talking about Park Connector, right, it just got me reflected about landscape of from Parliament and then Botany, Taman Tugu. And just a few days back, I visited AICB. And I realized that part is like a totally non-KL, right? It doesn't feel like KL, but it is part of KL.
But it's not connected.
Right? And if I were to cross from AICB, just across to the station there, I went there across.
No, that's why the river becomes important, because it's actually located quite close to the river.
Correct.
You can make the river a connecting point. You can walk along and across it.
Yeah.
And this is something that I think will be important, should be important in terms of city development, city planning.
That's right.
And KL can be the start of it because they have the budget, they have the ecosystem, they have the kind of foot traffic. And if let's say that can be a good starting point, it can also be a learning kind of exposure to other cities around Malaysia.
So why we don't do that? Because it's not like something that's new, right? It's been there for quite long.
Political will, the political vision, and also the exposure, whereby our officials, our politicians, when they go overseas, is really should be a real lawatan sambil belajar, not lawatan sambil shopping lah.
Now I think about it, actually, if they were to do that, and then near KLCC there, it will also connect to Kampung Baru.
Yes, correct.
I think if you build a very nice connector, right, I think Kampung Baru will develop very beautifully as well.
Yes.
Because the other day I also went over there. I realized it's also a whole different world.
Yes, correct. And there's actually a bridge that connects, Jalan Sultan Ismail with parts of Kampung Baru. It's called the Saloma Bridge. Have you heard of it before? It's quite a colourful bridge. A lot of people go there to take pictures.
I've been hearing about that.
Yeah, so that's one example. But of course, a lot more can be done. And again, the river is very important. Because the river, I can't remember whether it's Klang or Gombak River, also runs through Kampung Baru. And that can be an important connector.
Well, but I think that we are more busy developing private parking around KL area.
Yes, but that can be changed. I'm cautiously optimistic. So, if somebody who is listening to this can send a message to Dr. Zaliha as Minister in charge of the Federal Territories, this would be something that I think you can take on your mantle in the next couple of years. So with that, we've come to the end of episode 10 of Are We Okay? The podcast that talks about public policies in ways that are relevant to you, brought to you by Zeus Coffee, where coffee is a
necessity,
not a luxury. Thank you very much.
We'll see you next week.